meetings that we've included as part of the Wales Elective Optimisation programme. The plan is that we're going to have one of these every month, and really you'll see when we go through the slides that we are hoping that you will let us know if there's any specific areas that would be of interest for you, so we can contact people and make it a really interesting and useful meeting for you all. Next slide, please, Lisa. Okay, so very brief agenda. Welcome to everybody. We're not going to go around and do introductions from everybody in the meeting, because obviously that would probably take us far too long. But I'm very pleased to introduce you all to Dr. Adrian Kwa, who has kindly agreed to provide you with a presentation about how Nottingham have really transformed their ophthalmology services. So you'll be hearing from Adrian shortly. And then there's going to be an opportunity for you all to ask Adrian some questions about his presentation. Loretta, who you all know, is then going to give you a brief overview of some of the findings that have emerged so far from the theatre visits that have taken place in both Cumtaff and Betsy. And then just if there's any other business anyone wants to raise anything. Thank you.
And that's it.
Okay, so just the normal housekeeping rules. If you can all pop yourself on mute. As I've said, there'll be a Q&A after the presentation. If when we get to the Q&A, if you can please raise your hand as usual on Teams. And if before you ask the question, if you can just maybe mention what your name is and what your role is. And also, if you've got any questions throughout the presentations, if you can pop them in the chat box, and we can pull those together and get back to you on those either during the meeting or after the meeting. We are recording the meeting, so we can share the recording link to those colleagues who are unable to join today. And we'll also share the slides after the meeting as well. So the purpose of the monthly meetings is to really share good practice and learning to health boards in Wales. So this could be good practice that we've seen when we're out and about in Wales as part of the theatre optimisation programme, or indeed it could be things that we spot when we have the regular checkpoint meetings with the health boards. And also one of the reasons why GIRFT were brought in to help with this programme is that a programme such as this has been running in England for some time now. So there is quite a lot of good practice already out there in England, which you want to bring to Wales so that you can learn from that as well. Each meeting is going to have a different focus, and really to some extent the agenda's yours. We really want to make sure that you are hearing about the good practice and learning that will help you. So if you've got any specific ideas about what you'd like to hear more about, then either please pop it in the chat box today, or if you can email Lisa. And if you can share any of the links for the slides or the recording to anyone in your health board that might find the meeting beneficial. Already mentioned that we're going to record the meetings and the papers will be circulated. Okay, so I think we're going to hand over to Adrian now, but I think Sarah did have a hand up. Is that?
I did have, Alison. I was just checking as you were talking. I wondered whether you were showing any slides. So I just had a blank screen and I just wanted to check I wasn't the only one.
Oh, okay. So Loretta,
I could see everything.
Them?
I could see them. Yeah, they've gone down now, but yes, they were definitely up.
Oh, okay. Okay, good job I asked then. I couldn't see anything.
We will share the slides though, Sarah. So if you hopefully they might come up now for you.
That's fine. If not, I might log off and log back on. Sorry, Alison, to interrupt.
No problem, Sarah. Thank you. Okay, we'll hand you over to Adrian now. Thank you very much.
Right. Hi there. Hopefully you can hear me. Yep. So I'm Adrian, one of the anaesthetists in Nottingham, and I'm here to talk about our fast attenuative cataract pathway that we've developed a few years ago, well, a year ago now, and it's been up and running for the last year or so. I'm an anaesthetist, but I'm now the head of service of ophthalmology as well. To know how that happened, but anyway. So I've no conflict of interest to declare, and I'll be talking about two machines that were used for this pathway that was essential for us, but I've not linked to them in any ways. I'm going to start with a riddle. Because when I was in Hong Kong when I was a child, there's this riddle that says if it takes 5 minutes to cook a packet of instant noodles, then how long would it take to cook 5 packets? Now, some of you might think 5 times 5 is 25, but the actual answer is 5. Okay, we'll come back to that in a minute. So executive summary, we've kind of doubled our cataract throughput from 4 to 8 patients per session. Now, I'm being a bit generous. So we were doing minimum was about 4, but it's usually about 5 cases per session. But we're now doing 8 cases in just under 3 hours out of the 4-hour session. We're now doing 8 medium complexity cataracts in the 4 hours. Is that compared to what Gerv says we should be doing, which is 8 mixed complexities, so easy and difficult ones, or 10 easy ones in one session. We can probably do 9 very soon, and 10, maybe 11 when we optimize the whole of the pathway. I was told that we've got a projected increase in income by about 528,000 per annum, and that's just by doing 3 extra cases with 2 lists per week, which is pretty impressive, I thought. It only took a few months to implement, but I'll tell you a bit more in a bit more detail in a minute. And we're not talking about using just a team. It is using any staff in the team, just a normal surgeon, normal anesthetist, normal scrub nurse, not the fastest one. So you should hopefully, well, should be able to apply it to most trust. Now, if you're looking for recipes, this is I'm afraid I can't help you. There are lots of if you're ophthalmologist and doing cataract surgery, there are lots of recipes out there. What I would say is that they just take the concept from the recipes that is out there, and from my talk as well. You're unlikely to be able to directly copy and paste onto your trust because the infrastructure is different, the staffing is different. But what I hopefully will tell you in next 10 minutes or so would give you an option of how you can run things a bit quicker, but more efficiently. So that's number one. Really, one size does not fit all. So didn't expect to be able to cut and paste any recipe that you find out there. And as I said, hopefully you will learn the concept of what I have achieved with the cataract pathway in Nottingham and apply the similar things to your trust. Just to clarify, low complexity cataract surgery, we're talking about anything up to 10 minutes to operate on. Medium complexity is anything between 10 to 20 minutes, and high complexity is anything 20 minutes or more. Obviously, if you have a fast surgeon, then it'll be a bit quicker. If you have a very slow surgeon, even the low, very easy one, take a bit longer. So just for clarity and just for uniformity, so I'm going to call this surgical time instead. So low complexity is 10 minutes and medium complexity 10 to 20 minutes. Again, definition is very important. Turnover time. Now, turnover time in most measures is the time between patient leaving theatre to the next patient entering the anesthetic room, or theatre non-touch time. The turnover time I'm talking about is the end of surgery, so last dressing being applied to the patient, to the next patient coming into the theatre, and the end, and then finishing the stop movement on the WHO pathway, the WHO checklist even. So I'm talking about a much longer period of time. And as I said, we managed to reduce this time from about 15 minutes-ish, 15, 20 minutes per patient, down to about 6 minutes consistently. Going back to the beginning, so back in 2017, I was the ophthalmic anesthesia lead. I was an anesthetist. Gerv produced this graph that shows how poorly we're doing. We're Nottingham, and we should be doing at least 8 cataracts per session. Average in the country is about 7, and we're right down there about between 4 to 5 per session. Now Norwich was doing much better, so we went down to we thought, well, we'll go down to Norwich and see what they were doing, and see why they were so good. And this is what Norwich was doing. Norwich was doing what they call the high volume, low complexity list, where the cataracts are for all straightforward, you should take less than 10 minutes to finish. But what was impressive was they can turn over theatre in about 5 minutes. So again, last dressing on to next patient ready for operation in 5 minutes. They did 14 cases and still managed a half an hour break in between, and still have a bit of time left at the end as well. Compared to us, we will always start late because of various reasons. Our operation are a little bit more complex, but you can see the red bit is very different. We take almost as long to do the operation, almost as long to turn over theatre as the operation compared to Norwich, and we can fit maybe 5 cases in. And by this time, the theatre is usually not happy for us to do the 6th case because it's obviously it might overrun, and so we know so 4 to 5 cases is fairly normal for us per session. But as I said, we're talking about different things. Norwich is doing low complexity cases. We're doing medium complexity cases. So we're comparing apple and oranges, really. So learning point number 2, if you get beaten up with statistics, make sure you're comparing the same thing. But as I said, despite that, we were turning over theatre very slowly. But why are we so slow? So what I did was we did some high motion study. And what we were doing is that the patient will leave theatre and then we'll go to clean theatre. And then we can't do the next step until we clean theatre. So we can't, the scrub nurse can't scrub until the theatre is cleaned up. And then the scrub nurse can prep the trolley. And then the patient can come in. And then the surgeon wash your hands. And then we can do the WHO checklist. So the whole process of what I define as turnover takes about 15 to 20 minutes to do, which as I said is almost as long as the operation. So we can try to work a bit more efficiently. So we can ask the scrub surgeon to scrub up a bit earlier. Sometimes we can get a patient in a little bit earlier as well. Depends on the scrub nurse really. So some scrub nurse doesn't mind the patient lying on the table while they're getting their bits ready. But some scrub nurses will feel quite under pressure if the patient's lying there waiting for them to do their bit, and they don't like it. So they don't like the patient to come in until they are almost ready. So they might come in at this point. Again, trying to be a little bit more efficient is everything will still take me into 8 to 12 minutes, and it really depends on which scrub nurse it is. With the fastest scrub nurse, some proactive surgeon probably still take about 8 minutes, but obviously you don't always have those people around all the time. So coming back to my riddle, said 25 minutes to cook 5 packets of noodles, but that's assuming, but you might be assuming using 1 hob and 1 saucepan. But if you have 5 hob and 5 saucepan, then you can do it in 5 minutes. And this is exactly what we've done. We split the pathway into 3. So we have the nurse's pathway, nurse pathway or patient pathway. The last dressing on the patient will leave theatre with clean theatre, and then the next patient enters an anesthetic room. But while all that is happening, the trolley is already prepared in the prep room, and when the clean sweep is done, when everything's clean and everything's clear, we can the scrub nurse will just push the trolley into the theatre. Set up the phaco machine will take about 2 minutes for the operation, and then we can start the WHO checklist. And at the end of the case, surgeon write the notes, scrub up again, and then start the next case. And we can reduce this whole process from, as I said, 15 to 20 minutes down to 4 to 8 minutes. Again, depending on how familiar the staff are with the pathway. But the fastest we've done it in was about 2.5 minutes, but that was with 2 surgeons at a time. So it can be done. So it's all about working smarter, not harder. And this is not new, because again, as I said, these recipes, this pathway is kind of mentioned in these recipes that's already out there. And what you need really is a prep room, because if you haven't got a prep room, you can't be efficient. You can't get things done beforehand. Then you have to prep your trolley after all the steps have been done beforehand. So you can't turn over quickly. You can't be efficient with your turnover without a prep room, unless you break infection control policy or you stress the staff by asking them to work faster, which is not sustainable. Except we don't have one, and we're not alone. And I have worked in my youth. We have worked as a locum in quite a few different hospitals across the country. Before I was doing operating anesthesia, I know that there is no prep room in most theatres complexes. So this is what ours look like. We have a operating room in the center there, and a anesthesia room, a sluice, and a clean room that I think they used to be and when was first designed might be maybe thought of as a prep room, but now it's used as a clean room for storage and got cupboards built in there. So there's nowhere to prep the trolley at all. So I came up with this idea of using the anesthetic room as a prep room. Now, it makes sense because there's plenty of space in the anesthetic room. It's next to theatre. You don't need it really if you're using just topical anesthesia for the cataract surgery. Infection control says no, because the air change is not adequate. So to get a surgical tray ready, you need 25 air change per hour to be considered a sterile environment. Our anesthetic room is about 18 air change per minute, so per hour even. So it's not good enough. So what we've done is we bought these laminar flow machine to create a laminar flow in front of the tray, and we're the first in the country to use it this way. So this is what it looks like. This is a portable machine that we just wheeled out of theatre, and then create a laminar flow in front of the trolley, and we can set up while the operation is happening. Because setting these up will take, even with the fast scrubness, it would probably take about 5 to 6 minutes to get everything sorted ready. We save that time, and if we take it out from the turnover time, obviously we save a lot of time overall. And if the patient have mobility issues, obviously, for cataract surgery, most are done under topical or local anesthesia, and they tend to be wheeled into theatre or walked into theatre. They get on off trolley or on the operating table by themselves. But as you can imagine, cataract surgery are usually done on the older population. They will be less mobile. They might be mobile on the stick or wheelchair and so on. If they have mobility problems, it will take them a while to get them on off the table, and that obviously contribute to the turnover time as well. For Norwich, they screen the patient, so they only do mobile patient. That is no mobility issue at all. But for us, what we've done is we bought these dedicated operating trolley that was convert from a sitting position into a lying position. And what we do is we get them ready in a separate area in the waiting area, lie them down supine, and then wheel them into the theatre. If they need a block for the operation, that's not a problem. We'll do the block as well at the same time while they're in the waiting area. And then we'll wheel them into theatre when they're ready. If you can show this video then, Lisa, of the turnover in action. So we've got a YouTube video of the turnover that we've recorded. It takes about 6.5 minutes to show. I'll stop sharing screen. Yep. This is a video clip of the Nottingham faster turnover pathway in action. To make things more interesting, so to speak, we have a locum surgeon using the pathway for the first time. All our patients are having subtenon block for their operations. We will demonstrate how we can turn over theatre in under 7 minutes despite these constraints. We are using an area in the day case surgery unit to perform our blocks. We have an anaesthetist and an ODP running this area. The block is performed while a patient is on table in theatre. Patients on our high volume cataract lists are normally operated on under topical anesthesia only. For this video, we wanted to demonstrate that the pathway can also apply for patients needing a block. Preparing the surgical tray in advance is a key to being efficient. Doing so allows the workstream to run in parallel, and scrub team can set up for the next case in their own time. Even colleagues who takes a bit longer to set up their trays can run this pathway. To do that, you need a surgical prep room with sufficient air change. In Nottingham, like a lot of trusts across the country, our theatres are designed without dedicated surgical prep room. We go around this problem by using our anaesthetic room as a prep room. We are using a laminar flow machine to create a sterile field over the surgical tray to mitigate infection control issues. In this pathway, the theatre team consists of 2 scrub nurses and 2 runners. The video starts after the last dressing has been applied. This video has no sound. In the block room, subtenon block has already been performed while the last case was on table. You can see how our staff is not rushing around to achieve a quick turnover time. There is no pressure on the staff to work any faster than they normally do. Back in the block room, we are now taking our time getting the patient comfortable on the operating trolley beforehand. This pathway is suitable for patients with mobility issues or have problems with lying flat. Patient's care is not compromised with this pathway. Our runner is taking his time explaining to the patient that he is about to be set up on the operating trolley and that he will be brought back to the ward. Our patient left theatre at 1 minute seconds. Our locum surgeon is writing his surgical notes and completing the digital records. The remaining runner is getting theatre ready for the next case. When she is ready, she will let the scrub nurse in with a surgical tray. As the tray is already set up, the only job left now to do is setting up the phaco machine. You may be wondering why we still haven't left the block room yet. What we were actually waiting for is for the last patient to pass through the corridor just in front of the block room. We will leave for theatre as soon as the last patient has come back. You may have noticed some marks on the floor in the operating theatre. We made those marks at the beginning of the list to remind us where to position the operating trolley. If you're wondering where the next patient is gone, we're just taking our time taking the patient down the corridor slowly. Patients can get motion sickness if we push the trolley too fast down the corridor with them lying supine. Our patient enters theatre at 3 minutes 35 seconds. It took almost 2 minutes between patients because the block area is about 50 meters away from theatre. The video will now be sped up until the next point of interest. At 6 minutes 10 seconds, we are ready to perform timeout part of the WHO checklist and lens check against the biometry. The importance of getting this right cannot be overstated. Patient safety must never be compromised. And at 6 minutes 40 seconds, the patient is ready for surgery. Right, I'll share my screen again. Nope. So skip this part. So this is what our turnout, well, our theatre flow looks like now. So we're still starting late because the surgeon normally comes from clinic in the morning, and she had to see 8 patients before the case. So she's normally delayed by 15-20 minutes. We start the case, but you can see the turnover time is a lot shorter now compared to the before. That I'm going to say the data is probably not accurate, but the start time of the case and the finish time on the last case is accurate. And you can see that we're doing 8 cases in just over 3 hours. And you can imagine if we can cut out the red bit on this, if we can shift everything across to the left, we can definitely squeeze another 2, maybe 3 cases on. So we can definitely do 10, maybe 11 without stressing, as you saw in the video. And this is afterwards. So these are all complex cataracts. We were doing, I think we were starting with 7 first, and we were making extra 10, almost £10,000 per according to the finance team. How much did it cost? Not as much as you may think. The laminar flow machine was 15,000 when we bought it, was £15,000 plus VAT each, and we used 1 filter each per session. So but as you saw, you probably make that money back very, very quickly. If you're doing ophthalmology, then you may have one of these machines in your outpatient area anyway, because they are also used for intravitreal injections. The trolleys that we use, again, they're not as expensive as they look. We paid about £22,000 each, and that's with all the bells, most of the bells and whistles attached to it. So ours has got motorized space, so you can just press a button and the trolley will move by itself. So even with a bariatric patient, it wouldn't be too difficult to push them down the corridor. But as I said, the time saved by having with the less mobile patient on the same high volume list would definitely make your money worth, really. And you need 2 of these per list, because one you'll be operating, one you'll be getting the patient on ready beforehand. So feedback from others. So we had to borrow an ENT ODP from another theatre who hasn't done this before, and he only does cataract in the private sector. He said we're faster than the private sector, which is great. But what I was much more happy with was what the management said. So he said the patient care also was wonderful despite the faster turnover. One of the HCA who was initially skeptical about the idea says we did 8 cataracts in 3 hours. We're doing 10 next, and that's obviously true. And we've generated a lot of interest from East of England, and a lot of probably 15 to 18 trusts came to see what we were doing early part of the year. So as I said, if you need a prep room, and if you haven't got one, you need to make one. Otherwise, it's not going to work. Learning point number 4: you give that novel idea a chance. Now, I started this idea back in 2018. We didn't actually get this running up until end of 2022. And mostly because it's a wacky idea. No one thought it would work. People were very skeptical about it. Despite me winning Pulitzer Prize in one of those meetings, or this Bosch and Lomb Sustainability Prize in the Ophthalmology College meeting, we won. But after launch, everything, as I said, it worked great and everything. Everyone's really happy. Locally, we won the Ambitious Award for our trust because we did pretty well. As I said, a lot of people came around to see what we were doing, and we're now part of the case study on the GIRF library. So we can find that on the GIRF Future NHS website. And the finance team very kindly nominated me for Clinician of the Year, which I won last week. I was really pleased about that. So faster turnover pathway should be the norm, really, not for special occasion. And what I'm trying to do now, we have tried this already, but what we're trying to do now is push it for other types of surgery. So if you're ophthalmologist, you may recognize, if you're not an ophthalmologist, then these are cataracts and some other type of operations that is similar length. This would probably normally take about 4.5 hours. This is probably 1.5 lists for us normally. So this happened last year in April when we first trialed it with all the machines in place. If we were running a normal turnover model, it would have taken just probably 4.5 hours to do this list. But because we're running a faster turnover model, we did this in 3.5 hours. Similar kind of operation. So this is glaucoma operation. Again, using the not standard model, it would have taken this long, but we would have finished under 4 hours. The trainee was operating for some of the cases, though. Now, if the trainee was operating at this point with 1 hour left to do a 1 hour operation, then obviously the trainee probably wouldn't be allowed to operate. But because we're running the faster turnover model, we have still an hour and a half left, so the trainee was allowed to do the last case as well. So the faster turnover shouldn't really affect your training for your trainees. And if you improve efficient, you naturally do more cases. So I would say don't focus on the number of cases you want to do. Just say you want to turn over quickly, and it will naturally do it. That it would just naturally happen. So as I said, so we were doing the medium complexity cases. We should, in theory, be able to do 7, but with the faster turnover, we can do 9, and still have 15 minutes left. So this model, as I said, if you reduce the turnover time, you can do more. It works for most cases. As long as from my point of view, as long as anything less than 45 minutes, it should work. So if it's 45-minute cases in the olden days, when we used to do, you probably have 4 minutes left at the end of the list. But even with the fast turnover model, you have half an hour left. Obviously, you can't squeeze another 45 45 minutes case at the end, but you should be able to squeeze a small case in there, as we have 5 cases instead of 4. So learning point number 5, finishing. I'm nearly there now. Top-down approach doesn't work. Now, if you haven't read this book before, Our Iceberg is Melting is great. It's about change signs. It's really helped me a lot. But so the next few slides is kind of cut from that book to a degree. So you do need someone to drive it from the shop floor. Ideally, someone who's got respect for the whole team, either the surgeon or the nurse. I was lucky. I was a specialty doctor at the time when I was doing this. Now I'm a specialist. But obviously, no one listened to the specialty doctor. I was off my anesthesia lead. People did listen to me, but not everyone believed in the idea. Eventually, I got the finance team on board, and they helped me a lot and got it through the whole system and got it delivered really. So you do need someone to drive it from shop floor. As I said, it took me 4 years. Other people may have given up by then. I don't know why I did it. Anyway, but you do need someone with authority to open the doors for you where necessary, which is I think where most of you guys comes in. And you need someone to open this person, buy some of the stuff that you may need. You do need to spend money to make money in most cases. Start with a small group of believers. So we had half the theatre team didn't quite believe in the idea, half the team did. Those that didn't think couldn't think of why we can do 8 cases without stressing. So we rendered a team that did believe us. We did it in, as I said, we did 6 cases, 7 cases, then 8 cases in 3 hours. And everyone's thinking, oh, I wouldn't be in the A team as well. So everyone kind of joined in. They asked to be in the team. Ignore the no-nos. There will always be non-believers. If you can ignore them, try as hard as you can. Obviously, there will be someone higher up that would also be a no-no, but you just need to work way around it somehow. Start small. As I said, we started with 6 cases first. We're using pathway finish in about 2.5 hours. Then did 7, and then eventually did 8. But because of late start, we didn't try 9 yet. But it's better to start small than starting with 10 and fail. And if I started 10 in the beginning, even though I know it can be done, and we fail, then people will just say it's not going to work, and then that'll be the end of it. Lots of encouragement and cakes if you can afford, or pizza if you can afford pizza. People do need encouragement to believe in silly ideas like mine. Debriefing is important. We listen to all team members and have a flat hierarchy. So at the end of each list, we have a proper debrief. Every single person is allowed to say what they want to say, and we did learn a lot from the debrief. And we just keep tweaking the pathway. When I started the staffing model, we started 2 scrub-nurse and 2 runners. I let the scrub-nurse take charge of that side of things, and eventually we settled on 3 scrub-nurse and 1 runner model. As I said, I wouldn't give you the full recipe. What I would say is that this is the idea. Try to adapt it, and I'm sure it'll work for your trust. But again, you need someone to drive it from the ground. And invite others to join your club as you go. As I said, when people realize that you're the elite club, you can do stuff quickly and in high volume without stressing. They want to be part of the team as well. And that's me done. So to summarize, anyways, so reducing turnover time from 15 to about 5-6 minutes. We can do 8 cases in 3 hours. We can probably do more, and mobility is not an issue. So what I tell my surgeon is, if I can turn over theatre in 7 minutes, how many cases can you do? Rather than saying you have to do 10 easy cases, crack on. So the onus is on the surgeon to do what they can manage, and then show them that actually you still got time. Next time we can build up on that. Theatre team of any experience and speed can work this pathway, and this is important. You can't just design something for your A team, because if one of them go off sick, then you may be stuck. You have to design something that would work for everyone and make sure they're not stressed, and try to get them on board early as well. Training is allowed. Again, as I said, it shouldn't impact on training. If anything, it will help with training. because you can do more cases in the same amount of time. So you should be able to do more training as well. And I tell them that if you're running behind, then get the consultant to take over to catch up. And doesn't have to be cataract, it can be anything that's under 45 minutes, because you're saving a lot of time every turnover. That's it.
Thanks ever so much, Adrian. That was
No
really
worries.
interesting. And I know just looking in the chat box that there's lots of comments,
Right.
and not necessarily questions. We can come on to those in a second, but just observations, really, just reflecting on some of how you're doing things in Nottingham and how things are currently done in some of the health boards. And actually, Craig was saying that in some they're doing some HVLC lists with 9 cases for per 3.5 hour session, which is great, Craig. I think we'll be picking your brains about how that's been successful in Swansea. And also that theatre chairs are used in some health boards at the moment, I think, but not across all health boards. So I think it would be great to understand more about sort of that, the investment costs of those to speed things up. So we'll move on to just see whether or not anyone's got any specific questions for you, Adrian, before we move on with the agenda. So
Sure.
has anyone got any comments or questions for Adrian at all, please? Pop your hand up if you have. Okay, Michael.
Thanks, Adrian. That was really good.
Thank you.
I was a senior registrar in Nottingham in
Oh, yeah.
1995, and
Right.
it was a great place then, and it looks an even greater place now with the Nottingham Eye Institute. So you've got a very nice little eye hospital there, and I would imagine nobody bothers you and comes to your theatres and takes over and puts other cases in them. And you've managed to keep your anaesthetists as well. So
Yes.
how did you manage to justify keeping an anaesthetist when the college ophthalmologists doesn't really support anaesthetists? We have anaesthetists in Swansea because our ALS leads tell us that if you have a peri-arrest situation, an ALS practitioner isn't licensed to cover somebody that goes into, say, acute pulmonary edema or has a very bad arrhythmia. So I would imagine you've used such instances to keep your anaesthetists allocated to the eye lists to do other things apart from make them more efficient.
So we don't have anaesthetists for all lists. Some of them are local only, run by surgeons. But we do quite a lot of GA cases. So I guess that's how we justify keeping our anaesthetists at the moment. We don't normally have a anaesthetist for the cataract list anyway. It's normally done by topical anesthesia. The video we saw, I just happened to be there because we were recording, so I'll just make it more difficult by doing the block as well for the list. But no, I don't know how you can. Yeah, I guess if you do more GA cases, you're allowed to keep your anaesthetist. We are quite short anyway for anesthesia.
Yeah.
In general.
But great stuff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question, Michael. Any other questions at all for Adrian? Perfect. Okay, so big thanks, Adrian. Really appreciate you giving up your time to share that learning. Much appreciated. So if we can move on with the rest of the agenda, please. I think it's over to Loretta now.
Thank you. And thanks for that presentation. It was excellent. And seeing it visually, it's amazing what you can do in a minute, isn't it? You know, it was quite incredible watching it in that way. So thank you very much. So we're just going to touch on 2 visits that we've done recently, along with GIRFT as part of along with the NHS exec, and Ken Harries was along that journey with us, along with Meredith and Jenna from our team. So essentially, CTM and BCU approached Welsh Government and asked for some additional funding for us to do visits to Princess of Wales Hospital and to BCU to look at all of the theatres that they were running there. And the purpose of it was really to add an external perspective to look at where good practice was happening, but also share good practice across what was happening in particularly NHS England. But recognising we saw some very good practice as well as we would all expect within NHS Wales as well. So as part of that, the team met with the stakeholders that were asking us to go in, and then we agreed a set structure. And for each of the visits, we had a timetable and we split into groups, and we all went to different things, whether that was observing directly in theatre or looking at how patients were booked, and also looking at pre-assessments, wards, whether there was a day of surgery admission area, the bed situation, all of those kind of things. And in advance of that, GIRFT were provided with a set of information that we requested that would aid that visit, all those visits. So today we're just going to provide some generic headlines, really, of some of the things that we found. So if you go on to the next slide, please. So we went to Princess of Wales Hospital in September, and that was for 2 days. And the BCU visit was slightly longer because it was all of their sites, and we did that over 7 days. And these are just some generic comments. I'm not going to be specific about which health board that they were in or which site they were in, but what we did find, the elective bed base had been significantly reduced since COVID, and that was directly impacting theatre productivity opportunities. That was either that the bed base had completely been reduced and was really impacting on the ability to fully fill theatre sessions, or it was that they were impacted by medical outliers, either in doses or in their bed base. Workforce was a challenge, in particular anaesthetics and theatre staffing. So there's some work that we're going to be picking up from an NHS executive point of view in terms of some of those staffing challenges across Wales, and understanding what they are, who's dealing with it, and what more needs to be done, I suppose. What was a common thing that we saw was that the patients weren't being given to come in dates far enough in advance, and that patients were predominantly being pre-assessed after they were giving a TCI date. So as you can imagine, if I've got a to come in date for 2 weeks time and you're trying to fit me into pre-assessment in the next 2 weeks, the likelihood is we're going to get a drop out of that that's very difficult to backfill. So that was a common issue we saw across all of the areas that we went. And then in terms of pre-assessment, it was very variable, both in terms of the capacity to pre-assess and the workforce that was involved in that process. In all the areas we went, there was a 642 in place, but we didn't witness that challenging sufficiently productivity opportunities. It was more of a are all the TCIs done? Have we got any cancellations, any radiology equipment, that kind of thing? Really looking at where the opportunities were. We didn't see that was a consistent approach. So I think there's some work that we can do across Wales to look at that process. And I know within some health boards across Wales that's done particularly well. So maybe there's some sharing that we can do from a Welsh perspective through this process. So next slide, please. And I think data was a real issue on all sites, and it was clear that some teams where data would be really valuable to them in terms of understanding what was going on, what was working well, what wasn't working so well, just wasn't getting to the right place. And I think that's a real opportunity to share the data that's coming through around how the theatre functions work, to look for the solutions. And I think in the presentation that we saw just a minute ago, it just shows this has to be driven from the ground. It has to be teams having the right information to make the right decisions in order to improve the productivity that we're seeing. Because at the moment, the data is showing us overwhelmingly that we're not making the best use of the time that we have within theatre. And perhaps some of that learning from what we've just seen about really breaking that down into those stages, I think is helpful. And we also know across Wales, certainly I've seen some work from Swansea Bay where some of that very detailed work has been undertaken. But I think one of the most important things that we found was really extremely motivated staff, whether they were surgeons, whether they were ODPs, whether they were nursing staff. There's a huge amount of motivated staff that really know that there's more that they can do, and I think it's about us giving them the skills and the ability to do that, and that's partly data, it's partly time, and partly support and the ability to listen to what those ideas are. So we saw some excellent day case transformation that had gone on, where procedures had been moved into minor procedure rooms. So some really good stuff. And I think capturing that and sharing that across Wales again would be a good thing that we could do. Some of the facilities we saw were excellent for theatre productivity gains, and others were far from ideal. So we saw the good, the bad and the ugly in terms of what staff were working with and what unique challenges or opportunities that gave. And as I alluded to, day case provision on one site particularly was really good, and a lot of that had been driven by the bed pressures that they were under, but the balance still isn't right in terms of that. And on some of the sites, we saw real evidence of theatre and ward staff working really together in terms of trying to drive down late starts and improve turnaround times and working collectively rather than in silos. So that's just a summary of some of the things that we saw. Ken, I don't know whether you wanted to add anything. We didn't want to go into too much detail in this forum, but they were the main themes I think we saw.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's hard to sort of overestimate the benefits of visiting other people's systems and walking the pathways and picking up ideas and sharing ideas. And I think it's as helpful for the site that you visit as it is for you going back to your own sites with those ideas. For me, it's the answers are all out there. It's just a matter of picking those ideas of best practice and putting them together into one system, really. And I think if we go down this process with the right attitude, we'll be a lot further to the ideal than we were at the start. And I think, as I said, it's all there. It's just a matter of identifying it and applying it. Yeah. Thanks, Loretta. That's really good.
Great. Thanks ever so much, Loretta and Ken. Are there any specific questions that any of you have with regard to the presentation that Loretta's just done? I don't think I can see any hands. We did say at the start that it would be really helpful if people could, if you've got any ideas about where you'd like to learn more, or any thoughts or suggestions or reflections on what you've seen today from Adrian, if you can pop those in the chat box. We really want to make sure that these meetings are giving you the sort of examples that would be helpful to you. It's probable that we're going to find really good examples of stuff around Wales as well that we're going to want to share. So it's not just about going out over the border to England to find stuff, because we know there's pockets of excellence already in place in Wales. So we'll be searching out for those over the coming weeks to make sure that we can share those with you as well. So any ideas that you've got, anything that you would really want to understand more of, either from England or other health boards, please pop in the chat box or drop us an email so that we can try and configure these learning sessions to what it is you really need. I will just see if there's any other questions, and if not, then we are finishing slightly early. The next one of these meetings is on the 10th of January. We've already got a couple of people coming to talk at that. So we've got Suzanne Titler, who is one of the Girth Theatre Visit team members, who visited Cumtaff and Betsy. So she's going to be coming along on the 10th just to give a little bit more of the Girth reflections and possibly share some of the good practice that they've seen in some of those areas in England. And then we've possibly got a presentation on some really interesting guidance that's recently been issued by Girth on a really efficient pre-assessment process. So we're contacting the people that have written that guidance and have shared that across England to see whether or not we're prepared to come and share some of that with you. But if indeed you're doing something at your health board which you think would be helpful to share with others, please pop that in the chat box, and we'll contact you and try and get you on the agenda at some point. And I think we'll definitely be contacting Swansea and possibly others, so you can describe how you've moved forward with 9 on a list. So thank you, Craig, for popping that in. So anything like that any of you are doing, not just about cataracts, but about any other specialty, particularly around HVLC. So whether you're doing a lot of cases per list or you've got a trajectory that's going upwards on that, then please let us know and we'll be sharing those with colleagues across Wales. I'll stop there and just see if there's anything else, Loretta or Ken, you wanted to add before we close.
No, that's great. Thanks, Alison.
Okay, you're very welcome.
That was inspirational, Alison. Thank you very much for that. And
Very
thank you
good.
to Adrian.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks very much. Thank you. Oh, Tarek's quickly put his hand up. Are you there?
No, it's all right. Don't worry. I'm going to pick it up with Craig offline. I'm just about to message Craig.
Okay, thanks, Tarek. Okay, thanks everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks
Bye.
all.
Thanks. Bye. Bye.